We're going to create a very simple multiple choice quiz with a auto score and a final result. So the first thing we need to do is an HTML canvas. Double click, go to the publish properties, change this to center and make responsive. Now I want to center it horizontally. I don't want it in the middle of the page. Say okay. So we have a timeline, we have output, all the basic things you should know. Let's grab the text tool because a lot of this in the beginning is going to be text. So let's just lay this out. Let's just drag out a box and we'll type in the question. All of these are going to be dynamic, and because they're dynamic, we'll be able to change them as we wish. So I will get into that in a minute. Let's line this up here. Box is a little big. All right, grab that text first layer. Let's name it the question or just question, so we know what's there. Let's lock it. New layer. Next layer, let's make A, B, C, D, you know, like a multiple choice thing. So just draw a box, type in an A. I'm going to select it, so I'm going to center it. And I'm going to make the box a little smaller because it doesn't need to be that big. Great. Grab the arrow key, hold the Option or Alt key. 1, 2, 3. I'll make them uneven on purpose. So let's change these to B and C and D. A, B, C, D. Now if I want these to be spread out like this, but I need them even, so I'll select them all. I'll come over to my Align panel. If you don't see it, just go Window, and you'll see that Align is in there somewhere. See, Align, there it is. So I want them all to the left, and I want them equal, and I'm going to drag them down just a little bit off the top. And that's too far. Yeah, there we go. All right. And this layer I'll just call A, B, C, and D. And I'll lock it. New layer. And the new layer, I'm going to add a next button, or some way to get there, but we'll start with some text. So just draw out a box, type out next, and an arrow, and I'll move this to approximately where I'd like it. Now, I'm going to I'll name this layer next, and I'll lock it, and I'll make a new layer. And on this new layer, we're going to do the scoring. So I'm going to grab my tool, type in the word score. And I want this not to be centered. I want this to go to the right side. So I'll just right, and I'll make this, I use the arrow. And then I'm going to cheat a little bit. So just like I use the Option key, I'm going to click this and I'm going to drag 1, 2, and I'll do it again, 2, and then I'll do it again 3 times. So now we'll just change it. So I'll do this, make that a 0, and we'll make it smaller in a minute. I'll make that a separator, and I'll make that another 0. This is wow, are you lazy moment of our game. So I'll get the arrow key, I'll click, and I'm going to drag that small, I'm going to drag that small, and I'm going to drag that smaller. I'll grab these two, then I'll use my arrow keys and just move them. If I hold the Shift key, they move faster. So we have a score, and I've got them approximately lined up where I want them to be. All right, so far so good. So we've got the question, A, B, C, D, the score, and next. We'll name this score. And I'll lock that. Now the next thing we need are the answers. So we're only going to make 2, and then I'll show you why. So after we get into this. So let's grab this, type out, drag it about that way. Type in the word correct. Let's, we don't want it centered, so let's move it here. And we'll drag it into position. About there. Now if I hold my Option key and drag down, and type wrong. Okay. Now, we need to, we've got these on, these are the answers. So let's change this layer name to answers. There you go, answers. So we basically got this set up by thinking, but there's pieces missing, and that's true, there are. So let's start at go in the same direction, start at the top. We'll click the question. Now the first thing is I'm going to need to move that in just a little bit. And the question here, we're going to make it dynamic text, which it already is, and we need to give it an instance name. So let's just type out the question. So it has a name. We're going to need to call it by that name. Now we could change this stuff. That's up to you. I don't care. And I'll lock this again. I lock things a lot because if I don't, I'll put things in the wrong spot. We don't need to do anything with A, B, C, D. So we'll lock that. Next. Okay, we've got next. So let's click on next. This does not need to be dynamic, so we'll turn it to static text. And we'll do some converting of this to a symbol now. So let's convert it to a symbol. Let's go modify, convert to symbol. We'll call it the next button. We'll make it a button and we'll say OK. So that's a symbol. Good. The next symbol, the button, we'll need to give it a name, so we'll call it next but. Okay, so it has a name. Let's move to the next group. Score. This is static. This is dynamic, and we will call this current score. We don't need to do anything with this. We'll make that static. You know, if you don't need to do anything, don't do anything with it. And we'll keep this dynamic text, and we'll call this total score. All right. So what do we have left? Correct and wrong. We're going to turn these into movie clips. We'll start with correct. We'll click on correct, modify, convert to symbol, call it correct. And that was a button. I didn't want that to be a button, so click here. This has properties. It says instance of correct. Click that, and we'll change this to a movie clip because that is really what we want, a movie clip. So when we double click this, it has a movie clip, movie timeline. This is going to be dynamic text. Let's call it answer 1. Let's name this text. Lock it. We're going to unlock it in a minute. New layer. Call it box. And let's drag the box underneath the text. Next thing we need to do is grab a rectangle box. We want the box to be green because we want it to be correct. So we're going to just draw a box. There we go, a green box. Perfect. So I'm going to do this in 5 frames. You could do it in 1. So I'm going to select both frames and I'm going to insert timeline frame. I don't need to change the text. The text is going to stay the same all the time. It's the box that'll change. So all I have to do is grab that, click on that keyframe, that black dot, and drag it to the end. So when I go to my scene, I don't see green. So we've got this going, and a couple things we have to do besides this. Create a new layer, drag it to the top, change it to name to actions. You could change it to commands. You can name it anything you want. I don't particularly care, but you need to do something. It's going to give us a keyframe. We need to stop this in its tracks. We don't want it to play automatically, so we need to go to actions. And we're on the current frame in actions. And we can either go down here and look for it in the snippets, or we can just do this. This dot stop, open parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon. Copy that. We're going to need to come down to the 5th frame click it, insert, keyframe, and just paste it. That way it won't run. So when we look at it, command return, nothing's happened so far. So let's go to the next one. We'll go to our scene, timeline, collect this. Again, this is going to be dynamic text. We'll answer that when we get to it. So let's first modify, convert to symbol. We'll turn this to wrong. And instead of a button, we'll use a movie clip. Actually, start it as a button and change it. Say OK. Now, if we go with the instance, click it, and change this to movie clip. That's exactly what we wanted. Okay. So, double click. Change this. Give it an instance. The instance is answer ANS2. Okay. You can name this text again if you want. Lock it so we don't screw it up. New layer. Name it box. Drag it beneath. Grab the rectangle tool. Change it to red because I want that red. And we'll just drag it over. Okay. And either way, it doesn't gonna matter. We're going to go out 5 frames, select 5 frame at 5, just drag straight down, insert timeline frame. We aren't going to be changing anything here, so we can just leave that go. We'll grab this little dot right here, click, drag to the end. If you don't do something right, Command Z is your best friend. There we go. Now, we want to add a new layer, actions. And in the first frame of this, remember it was this dot stop, open parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon. And then in the 5th frame, which I jumped to the wrong one, we need to go add an actions, insert, keyframe, and we can paste it in. All right, done. So we go back to our scene, and neither one of these, you need to give this an instance, wrong answer, that's fine, 1. So as you recall, we click here, we didn't give this an instance name, we need to go correct answer, 1. Okay, good. Now, here's the trick. We've got this one here. Hold the Option key, click, drag, click, drag, get them lined up. Okay, so this one. Now, this one is answer wrong. This one is 2. Just give it a new instance name. And then 3. All right, let's add a new layer to my scene, and I'm going to call it actions. Now the first things first, we don't want this to run. So we'll click this, actions, we already know what this is, this dot stop. As you can see, okay, so we've got it stopped. Nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to go there. We need to determine how many questions we're going to ask. Now I'm only going to do 3. So this is question 1. And I'm going to do question 2, 3, and then a final frame that'll collect your score and tell you what to do. I'm going to put 5 frames in between each one of them simply so you can see them, no other reason. So I'm going to need question 2, question 3, and the final answer. So I'm going to select all the way down, insert, and we'll just put frames to start with. So we've got 15 frames. At 5, hold the Shift key, and I'm going to insert a keyframe. And I'm going to go to 10. By the way, if you can't line them right up sometimes, down here you can add that number in. I'm going to select it again, insert keyframe. All right, now I'm not going to put a keyframe at the end because we're going to be adding some more layers and doing some other things, so we'll just wait on that. I am going to put a keyframe here at the action, so insert keyframe. All right, so the first thing we know is every one of these keyframes you have to stop at. So let's go back to this, copy it, click this, paste, click this, paste, and click the last one, paste. So everything stops. That's the easiest thing to do. So we've got that. We're going to have to do a couple things on the very first action frame. We're going to have to put in the first question. We will have to put in everything that's supposed to go here, what the next button's supposed to do, and how to score. So there's a lot going on. Let's just start with the question. So I'm going to click the question. I know this. Go to the next line. And the question, if I just click the question, I just need to know the name of it. So I locked it, so that doesn't help me. The name of it is the question. I need to know that. So the thing that I need to do here is, after this, I'm going to type this dot the question. It has to be exact. I'll go back and check. Dot and text equals. Let's type in the first question. Let's just say, this is the first question. In between quotes, it's a string. Now, the only thing I want to make sure is that this is called the question the way I wrote it. Yes, it is. So let's test it. Command return. And here you go. This is the first question. So we're able to change the question whenever we want to. This is just the first frame. So we've got that down. Now, go back to our beginning. That's pretty good. We need to set up some variables. Now, these variables are going to be used to decide whether an answer, how we're going to score. So let's start with var. And we'll go total score equals. Now we know how many questions we're asked. We're going to ask 3. So we know what to put here. We'll put 3 and a semicolon. Now I need another variable, var. This one's really important. The count equals 0 semicolon. That's going to be a really important variable. Next thing. We need to tell each one of the questions or the answers what's supposed to be in there for this particular one. So let's click and make sure we've got the right. So this is, and I write this down because I forget what the path is supposed to be. So this is correct answer 1, and notice it's all in lowercase. That's absolutely essential. And let's open this up. And let's click the text. And when we double click the word correct, we got the next thing will be dot ans1. And inside ans1 is the text text, and then we'll be able to go from there. All right, excellent. Let's go back here to frame 1 and let's set up our first answer. So this dot, we said it was correct answer 1, all small, dot ans1 dot text equals, and I'm going to type something real obvious. This is correct, so we don't screw it up. Close the the quotes, semicolon. Now I'm going to test it. Command return. And I must have done something wrong. When something disappears like that, something's wrong. Usually it's a spelling mistake. So the first thing I do is I'm going to click and look up here, and oh yeah, I spelled this wrong. So let's take an S out of that, see what happens. Ah, there we go. This is the correct answer. Let's continue on. We need to do this one. Now, we can learn from the first one. This correct answer, text answer 1. So double click the word wrong to find out. Answer 2, ANS2. Okay, we can do that. And text. So we're going to do almost exactly the same thing. So why don't we just copy this, because I'm lazy. And we'll put wrong answer. And this would be 2. And text is this is wrong. And I'm going to put number 1 after it. And if I spelled wrong right, it would be good. Let's test it. And yep, now we have to get these other 2. Well, they're easy. Once you get the first one, just copy this, paste it, change this to a 2, change this to a 2, and let's do the same thing again, and change this to a 3, and change this to a 3. Now when we test it, so we've dynamically added a question and 3 answers. The next thing we need to do is set this up so that when we click on things, they'll play. So we know we've selected the right answer. So we have to make sure that we're going to get these to react to us. So if I click on this, I want to make sure this is set to movie clip and this is set to movie clip. Okay, great. So we need to be able to click on it and have it do what we want. So let's make sure we're in the timeline. I've got it selected. Now let's open the actions window. And I'll move this up here for a minute. And you can see this little thing right here, the code snippets. So if we click that, we're going to open HTML5 canvas and we want an event. We want to click, a mouse click event. Double click. Can hide that for a minute. And we've got all these things. Most of it's just stuff. And here's the important stuff. This, we added something called click. So what do we need to do? Right here we're going to add this dot, and we can just copy this part right here. V dot, and we just tell play, open parentheses, close parentheses, no, that's a colon, semicolon. So now let's go ahead and test it, command return, and yep, it works. So let's do that for the wrong one. Click it, code snippets, event handler, mouse click event, same thing, this dot, wrong answer, and this is 1, if you recall, dot play, open parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon. So let's see if that works. Command return. And yep, that works too. Excellent. So let's just continue down, choose 3, do the same thing. Mouse click event. And if you want, because I'm lazy, just copy this. Come here, remember this is 2, paste it, change that to 2. And let's choose our last one. Double click, paste, and change that to 3. Now, we can make all 3 of them work. That one works. Sometimes catching them is there we go, that one works. That one works. We'll find it. There we go. Okay, so everybody works. That's great. So after this, we need to make it so when we click on this and it plays, the rest of the questions can't be re-clicked on. So we'll type this. Now normally I would type in whatever it is we're trying to do, but let's use the hints to help us. Dot, type in the word mouse, start typing mouse, and capital E is enabled. Ah, there we go, enabled. And what are equals? False. And a semicolon. Now all we need to do is, what don't we want that to click? Well, we want wrong answer 1 dot mouse enabled false. So if I click this, this won't work. Well, let's get all of them while we're at it. And change it 1, 2, and 3. So when we do this, now I could click this and it's going to work. It doesn't matter. It'll all work. See? So let's undo this. Let's click correct. No matter where I do it, it won't click them. So you can only choose one time. Now it's up to you whether you want to change that, but right now I'm making it simple. So we got that. So let's just copy all these. Roll down to each one of our ones. Now, of course, we don't want to make the mouse not work here, so we would put correct 1, correct answer 1. I assume that's right, correct answer 1. All right, copy this. Go down to this one, paste it in, change this to 1. Go down to 3, paste that in, and change this, leave that at 2, and change this to 1. And guess what? So now you've disabled each one of these. So if I choose this one, eventually I'll get it. I can't click this, no matter where I click it and how many times I click it. Can't click this. None of these will click. So that's our answer. We go to the next one. So now let's do the next button. First, let's select it. Now we're going to have to do a couple things with this. One, we're going to have to reset all the buttons back to the beginning. And then we're going to have to play the movie clip forward to the next question. So we've got it selected. Let's use our, let's go here. And let's go to, let's do this. Click go to frame and stop. Do that. All right. This .go, so we can change this. So let's change it to what we want to do. We want to change this to our correct clip. The answer dot. And we want it, see? And we want to go to 1. Correct answer 1. Okay. Doing exactly the same thing. I'll copy this. And then I'll paste it, and I'll change this to wrong. Answer 1, copy it. Then I'll paste it. 2. Then I'll paste it. 3. And then I'm going to add onto this dot play. So that's the timeline. Okay, so let's see what happens. So let's choose 1. There we go. Press next. And notice that these are all changed. Now I haven't reset any of the mouse movement, so that won't work. So we'll have to go back. So the next thing we need to do is we need to re-enable everything. I'll change it to true. So what do I want to do? I'm just going to copy all these. I don't want to type. The more I type, the more mistakes I make. So let's go paste. Change this to true. And true. And true. And we'll just type in this dot correct answer 1 dot mouse enabled equals true. Make sure it's the same. Looks right to me. Now let's try it. Command return. choose correct. We'll get it. We'll work on that part. And click. And click. And click. Perfect, right? Okay. So we've got that part done. So we re-enable it every single time. Great. That's what we want. That's what now the next thing we need to do, scoring. Scoring is not hard, but takes a little time. We've got some things to set up. So let's go all the way back to the code, beginning of the code. Now remember we set up this part right here. Well, let's use some of our variables. Let's type this dot. Now, I don't remember the name of things at all, so I'll cover up this. And I want to go and I'm going to click on that right there. That's named total score. So I'll copy that. Get back to where I was. This dot total score equals, and then I'll put total score, the variable right here. Semicolon. Now, if I return, it didn't work because I didn't put .text. Now we can do it. There it goes. So that can change anytime you want. Just change the variable. Now we need to do the count. Now the count, we need to create first a function. So we'll type the word function. And we'll call it score it. And now this is very simple, but remember the variable that's so important, the count equals the count plus 1 semicolon. That's it. I feel like, the count in Sesame Street, that we count 1 and 2. No, anyway. So that's our function. We only have to add this function to one place, and that's at the correct, we have the correct place. We need to type in the function. It's score it, open parenthesis, close parenthesis, semicolon. Now that we've added the function, we need to have it score. So we're going to put this dot current score dot text equals the count, semicolon. So let's test it. Command return. Scored 1. Next. If we click on the wrong one, so like we can't go through and do this. Next. And then let's give another correct one right here. Go to the next frame. So we're doing really well. We can score it. So now that we're able to count up the code, we need a final screen that tells us what to do now that we've scored all this. So I'm going to close the action figure panel right here. And I am going to click on the answers, which is just, I'm going to lock everybody. Believe me, this is the best thing to do, otherwise I make a mess. I'm going to click a new layer. And I'm just going to turn the eyeballs off for a minute. Boom, can't see anything. So this is going to be final. So I can name it because I already know what it's going to be. Grab my text tool. And I'm going to draw out a text box. And in the text box, I'm going to type, your final score is ... Now this is obviously too big. And I'll drag it into position. Now suppose, I dragged this in, I wanted it to fill the whole thing, and I really want that to go in a little bit. Make sure it's selected. Now let's just add a little spacing up here. See, we can move it over. I'm going to move it over about 10. Okay, so that, just to make it pretty, nothing else. This is not dynamic, this is static. Next thing I need another text box. I'm gonna make a text box. I want to make a text box. I'm going to type in 0, but I want to make it really big. So I'm going to set this back to 0, and I'm going to make this huge. I'm going to make it 120 points, really big. I could even, something we haven't even discussed yet, I could even, if I wanted to, change the type of font family, etc. I'm using. So I could select it. I can choose any one of these. Let's just pick Walkway Bold. It's a very different looking, so you know that it's there. I'm also going to center it. There we go. This is going to be dynamic. Let's go Final Score. So we have that. And I'm going to grab my text tool once again, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to do drag out a text box and put, if your score is less than 2. Notice how big these are, so I'm going to select that all and get this to where it belongs. Your score is less than 2. You need to read the chapter. Okay, I don't want this centered, so I'll do this. I'm going to turn it back to Verdana, and if I can't find it, I got to start its typing. Excellent. This thing is huge. Let's make this small, and I'm going to give it a little we'll move it in about 10. I'll make sure that lines up there. And I'm going to move it down a bit because, you know, it's like way too close. I could even make this bigger if I wanted to. Ooh, let's go like crazy. Let's go 200. Oh my God, that's huge. No, I want 200. There we go. And I may need to drag it over there a little bit. Okay, so there you go. Now we know what this is called. This is called Final Score. Well, we don't want it to show up until I get here. Remember when we're going to click and drag that keyframe to right there. Now I can undo all my looks. And I want none of these to show when I get here. Now notice these are all open. I'm going to select them. Select them all. And I'm going to go Insert, Timeline, Blank Keyframe. All right, so let's see. To set this up so that the score will actually appear in here. So what do we want to put? Well, we're going to put this dot, and what did we call this? This was Final Score. So we need to go to where we were typing that. This dot Final Score dot text equals this dot current score dot text semicolon. So it'll transfer that current score from one to the other. So let's see what happens. Correct answer, next. Correct answer, next. And we'll get one wrong. And there you go. Your final score is 2. Now, let's look at it again. Let's try it again. Let's do a different score. Let's do wrong. Next. And wrong again. Next. Wrong again. Next. Your score is 0. So you can tell that it's getting the score, and then you can go from there. So that's how to do a simple quiz with scoring and a final message. The hardest part about this is the hit spots on the the buttons. That's the hardest part, but it does work. That's it. We're done. Thank God. Adios.